Hello. This is the Common Sense Party Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Otley. This is a podcast This is a podcast. Mission statement is to inform our listeners on topics that affect the everyday person. We are the Common Sense. Because we use common sense right now. This podcast. This is Sunday, February 5th. We're going to talk about why Republicans hate women, policing in America, Republicans ousted Omar off the committee, Chinese controlling Jamaica, Bill Barr abuse of power, Marjorie Taylor Greene making a fool of herself, the Florida AP pass, another George Santos probe, debt ceiling fight, and let's say this fun fact in VA history, and a Chinese balloon that skirted across America. So let's get with it. Yes, that was Knight Rider 2008, bringing us in to this episode. This is a Common Sense Podcast. This is Dwayne Otley again. Rate us, review us, follow, unfollow, comment, feedback. You can give us feedback at the Common Sense Party Pod at gmail.com. Also on Instagram. Oh, excuse me. Oh, that's a fine. We're also on TikTok. Give us 5 stars, give us 4 stars, give us 3 stars, give us 2 stars. If you don't give us any stars, I can assume that I'm doing it perfectly. Our first story tonight is why Republicans hate women. Taking side. Oh, hold on one second. Oh, excuse me. That is a fine. I need not to do that. Taking the fact that they killed abortion rights, and they just don't like women in power. So check this out.
Thank you, and thank you for yielding. Respectfully, if my Republican colleagues want to talk about hypocrisy, they should look no further than their party's full embrace of Donald Trump. Mr. Trump had thousands of conflicts of interest, which the gentle lady mentioned some of them, but this is a report that documents over 3,400 conflicts of interest. He promised a firewall between his business and his presidency, but he broke that promise and accumulated 3,400 conflicts of interest so far. The conflicts include visits to Trump properties by foreign government officials, taxpayers spending at Trump businesses, and Trump's own blatant promotion of his businesses. And this goes into great detail. I ask unanimous consent to place it in the record. So, John, I would say that President Biden and the Democrats are clear on our priorities, and we are delivering results for the American people. The lowering of cost of prescription drugs will help every American family. The Inflation Reduction Plan also capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month, saving lives, lowered the cost of health care, and combated climate change, investing in renewable clean energy, and moving our country to electric cars, electric postal fleet that'll get us off of fossil fuels, one of the biggest polluting items in our climate. And tackling gun violence, particularly important to my city of New York. We passed the first gun violence protection, cracking down and making the trafficking in guns a felony. And we also, let's talk about a woman's right to choose, protecting women's reproductive rights. I would say there's no democracy if women can't make decisions about their own health care. Yet the Republicans want to come in, they must hate women. They not only want to take away a woman's right to make decisions about her own health care, including her own reproductive health care, they want to take the steps to ban access to birth control. It's been reported. Then they want to make, they first talk about state rights, now they want to make a federal law limiting women's ability to make choices about their own health care. This is hypocrisy at the greatest heights, and I would take the Democrats' priorities are helping American people, and they are led by our President Joe Biden. My time has expired, and I now Representative Sessions has joined us.
Yeah, she was kind of long-winded, but they really hate women. Yeah, that was just an example of what they did at the federal level. But check this out. This is at the state level.
There are some very serious things that are in this rule package that I think we should be debating, but instead we are fighting, again, for women's right to choose something, and this time is how she covers herself and the interpretation of someone who has no background in fashion, because again, and this isn't a shot. It's inappropriate to wear sequins before 5 o'clock, telling me that I can't wear a crispy good St. John sweater if it has too many buttons.
No, this is not middle school. This is not children playing and talking about dress codes. That's Missouri State House of Representatives. And they started the new session, so they started off with a bang, talking about a dress code, specifically for women, because, they're going to wall out unless you let them know how to dress. Most of the women, of course, as you saw, also the woman behind her, they're all frustrated by this entire thing as she speaks truth. That woman speaking there, her name is Rachel Prouty, State Senator Rachel Prouty there. We're going to get to more of her speech, but this is what these new imposed rules look like before she jumps back in. While previous rules said that dresses or skirts or slacks worn with a blazer or sweater and appropriate dress, shoes, or boots were allowed to be worn by female lawmakers, Representative Ann Kelly, Republican, one of the co-sponsors of this bill, said on Wednesday that women needed to wear jackets on the floor as it is, quote, it is essential to always maintain a formal and professional atmosphere. So this debate originated in last year's session. I guess they were trying to squeeze that in there. Well, some people felt that it was only a select few female legislators that weren't dressing up to their standards and everything. So let's go back and hear from State Senator Prouty talking about how horrible this is. Let's let her say more.
I want you all to pay particular attention because there's going to be times on this floor where there are things that should not require debate and comment. I contend that these are one of these things. I spent $1,200 on a suit and I can't wear it in the people's house because someone who doesn't have the range tells me that it's inappropriate. That's not why any of us were elected, Mr. Speaker. None of us. I urge us to vote no on this because it's ridiculous. And also, congratulations, I'll keep that to myself, to any of us who may be with child. You surely don't have enough or have the money off the salary that we make to go buy a bunch of new clothes or tailored clothes. And I hope that you're able to continue to wear your cardigan and vote on behalf of the people who sent you here.
Again, this is what they're discussing. I would ask anyone that lives in Missouri, as they voted for folks, as their local officials, what they voted for, why they voted for certain folks. Was it because they said, you know what, I took a glance at the state live feed of the House proceedings and the state Senate proceedings, and I saw a woman's arm. And I said, oh my God, these people cannot be serious. I get the feeling about 0 people voted based off of that, but these legislators are doing it for that reason. There's more to this, but yes, you've had plenty of jobs, some professional ones as well. Have you had this type of dress code rules put in place on you?
No, I haven't had a dress code since high school, since junior high and high school, and even then it was pretty lenient, you know. I guess this what I'm wearing now isn't considered professional because it's just a dress with no jacket over it. You know, this is just an example of Republicans not having anything legitimate to talk about, right? This is what they do, and it's mentally exhausting for people, and that's what they want, right? They waste people's time and they waste people's tax dollars. They alienate and they infuriate entire demographics of people, in this case women, and they create problems out of nothing, and then they pretend to solve the problems that they created. It's really tired.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that the older I get, the more I understand the need for a dress code, right? Just the general idea that you don't show up to a place that you're trying to work, collaborate, get stuff done, extra schlubby. Like, we don't want to see you in your pajamas and flip-flops in our professional environment. Like, that's it, though. Like, as long as you don't look like a schlub, and obviously none of these women were planning on doing that, and like enforcing like these weird button rules is weird. But like, while I understand the need for a professional decorum in your appearance, and you want to feel like you're doing something, and you know you at least took the time to put some kind of adult clothes on for the moment, like this strict enforcement is kind of it's craziness.
I would like to know the actual motivations behind it, because there's something. It's not because they see a woman's arms and go, oh my God, she may not be able to read
I
this
wish
bill.
someone would try to count my buttons and tell me it's the wrong number of buttons. Like, how would that conversation even go? I can't imagine.
People have this conversation with their parents when they're 13, 14 years old.
When you're 13 years old, yeah.
I mean, I think that's the point where it kind of
It doesn't
stops.
happen after that, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
crazy.
Man, I'll say this about dress codes. When I was younger, because, you know, my mom's a Haitian immigrant, like, anytime I wear sneakers to, like, a party, I'm talking about, like, 6th, 7th grade, like, she was like, you're clearly not dressed up. You're not wearing shiny shoes right now. You know, like, that was, like, a thing. It's like, no, Mom, like, no kid in the 6th and 7th grade is going to wear church shoes to a birthday party. That's not a thing. But these were literal conversations that we would have.
One more thing before we go to the more of the arguments that happened, because there was more juiciness that happened on the floor over this whole thing. When I went to D.C., I've been there multiple times, but then I just kind of sat around and observed the D.C. folks in the Capitol area and legislators and all that stuff. Staffers, representatives, officials. I was like, I think there's like a dress code the other way. 97% of the women will walk around in these, no patterns, but it was plain dresses that were about knee-high, but all were sleeveless. Every one of them. I was like, this is really weird. It's like this. It's like a standard dress code, almost like an unofficial dress code. Maybe it's just a professional look. I don't know how they would try to find a way to regulate that when it comes to being the normal way people do stuff. I don't know if there's something about Missouri or who knows.
There's probably not as many equinoxes in Missouri, man. Those women in D.C. are jacked, JR. They got to show off.
You need nice arms for a sleeveless get up, yeah.
Well, another representative,
Gotta
though.
do your triceps.
You got to work on them first. Another representative, though, Ashley Own, she had a back and forth with Ann Kelly on the House floor of this whole thing. This is back in Missouri again. Let's watch this. This was fun.
You know what it feels like to have a bunch of men in this room looking at your top, trying to decide whether it's appropriate or not? Are we going to have Dana be checking our tags for whether it's a knit blend or a polyester blend or to silk count? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Lady, you're right. It is ridiculous. It is absolutely
So why are you
absurd
doing it?
that we even have to talk about it on the House floor.
I agree.
In
So
the
why did you
House
bring it up?
chamber. Why should we talk about something like this? It is absolutely ridiculous. You
brought this to the floor, lady. You tell me.
You would think that all you would have to do is say, dress professionally, and women could handle it. You would think elected officials could handle that.
You would think, but
No.
we're walking around
Men-
here in sequins and velveteen, to
Men-
the lady's point. So what is appropriate, and why do you get to decide?
We need to get over the sequence. That's ridiculous.
I'm not sure this other lady's point about why are we talking about this. You brought it up, crazy lady. You brought this whole thing up. I can always talk about this. What do you, more about this back and forth in this discussion about why they're talking about this and why are we doing this? You did it though. Professional.
JR, I will never be over the sequins. I will say that much. I will never be over the sequins. But it's, all of this it's really insulting to the members that these people have to serve with, right? People who ran really expensive and exhausting and like time-intensive political campaigns. They had political staffers who helped them get elected so that they could be there to serve their constituents, right? They made promises that I'm sure they would love to keep to those constituents, but they won't be able to get anything done if they're talking about dress codes, right? This is just typical Republican obstructionism, and I don't know why it's tolerated and legitimized. It's going to make us all crazy.
Well, we're already there, that's for sure. If you guys ever looked at Jim Jordan in the house, my man wears a jacket about 2% of the time. Always has his
What
jacket.
is he normally? Just no jacket? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Do you guys remember what Kristen Cinema was wearing when she did the sassy?
Oh, yeah, we all remember. Marjorie Taylor Greene never has a sleeve on. You know, it's stupid.
It's not professional is the problem. So one other thing, though. So by the way, and also anytime politicians do photo ops, it can be Democratic, Republican, doesn't matter. If they go to the border, sleeves have to be rolled up on the suit, on the dress suit, because that looks better for the photo op. We know this. Are they suddenly not professional? No, but these are all cues to show something else. But there was a bit of a compromise. Maybe you guys can relax on the sequence now. Let's go to graphic 3 here, because the State House eventually did approve a modified version of Kelly's proposal. Well, she doesn't know why they're talking about it, which allows for cardigans as well as jackets, but it still requires women's arms to be concealed. That's the state of the Missouri legislators. So you can imagine the next things they'll be talking about as they go into their session to go through their unprofessional look of their house.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, someone's in their feeling because it didn't look good, or I don't want to make it racist, but it might have been a slender Anglo-Saxon who got upset because a curvy minority looked better than her, but I digress. But again, Republicans do not like women. All their policy is to hurt women, hurt children, hurt minorities, stuff like that. All right, moving forward. We're moving forward to policing in America. Yes, we all know that another black man has been killed on video. This one's more personal, but they're trying to say it's not racial because it was 5 black officers. I disagree, because those black guys still kill a black guy, and black crime is a myth. Yes, I think they targeted Terry Nichols because the rumor is Nichols dated one of the cops' ex-girlfriend or something like that. So let's go to policing in America.
How would you describe the energy of the officers that pulled over Tyree Nichols?
On a scale of 1 to 10, they were at a 10.
Is that not police protocol?
No, it's not police protocol. I've been in this business for 36 years, and a lot of the aggression and, the approach was over the top.
The Memphis police chief telling NBC News her officers' actions were at a 10. And police chiefs across the country are saying the actions were unconscionable, unethical, and inconsistent with police training. Here now to discuss, Tracy Kazi, president of the Center for Policing Equity. She was on the force for 25 years. And Joanna Schwartz, UCLA law professor and author of Shielded, How the Police Became Untouchable. Tracy, officers know they're being recorded by their own body cameras. Can you explain why this still happens?
The body cameras were originally designed to hopefully bring more transparency. And what happens is officers get used to it. You get used to having it on your body. And so once you get used to it, you continue to move and do the things that you normally would do. And so, as we see the horrific video from the last event, it's one of those things where you often wonder, and you do ask yourself, what are you thinking? And what do you think is going to happen when someone sees this video? And I think what's also interesting about not just the body-worn camera is that there's also, poll cams. So the city itself has its own cameras that's placed throughout, Memphis. And without the videotape from that particular camera, I don't think we would have seen what we have seen.
Joanna, what do you think?
I agree. I also, having watched some of that video, get the impression that the officers on the scene were not aware or of the belief that they had done something wrong. They are joking with each other. They are talking with each other. And I agree, it's possible that they have forgotten that the video camera, the body cameras are on. They may also, in that moment, before they knew the extent of the damage that they had caused, believed that what they had done was not out of line.
Really? I'm just so gobsmacked.
Yeah.
He was being brutally beaten. He's pleading in despair for his mother, and they thought, well, this is what an officer does on a Tuesday.
The officers, you can see in the video, are standing around, talking to one another, joking with one another, for minutes and minutes and minutes after this occurred. There was no one saying, what have we done? There was no one saying, we've got to get our story straight. There was no one saying, this is an emergency. What we see when we look at that video is a lot of officers who seem like they've been amped up and they're letting off steam and joking and laughing about what's happened.
Tracy, I just keep thinking, what is this like for you as someone who served in the force for 25 years, right? Police officers, these are the most respected people. When our children are little kids, it's the job they dream to have one day.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, not just for me, but probably for thousands of officers across the country, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. Once again, here we are, where we don't have trust in communities of color. And the interesting part of this, too, and I think for most folks who are watching, we're often surprised that all 5 of those officers were black. And I can tell you, as a retired black officer, it is just devastating, especially after decades of our own legitimacy being questioned and really trying to make sure that we are servants of the community, especially the communities where we come from. So just devastating, absolutely devastating. And not only that, you have to ask yourself, what are they thinking? What was going on? And I think that one of the questions that we're all waiting to hear is from these officers themselves, because we will not know until we have that conversation. And of course, that will take place when they go to trial. So there's just absolute devastation. And that's all officers, because once again, we are struggling to make sure that we can build relationships and keep those relationships with communities. So it's just heartbreaking.
Part of police culture is this idea of having each other's back, that thin blue line. Does that mentality sometimes lead to officers protecting one another when they shouldn't?
Of course it does. I mean, we watched it. If you saw the video and you heard the joking and you already heard sort of the excuses being thrown out about what happened and how the stop, engaged the way that it did. And that's the dangerous part of this, right? Because what we know in Memphis is they have a policy. They have a policy of de-escalation. They also have a policy to duty to intervene. And not one officer that was standing there did anything to intervene. And I think what is even more heartbreaking is watching how long it took for them to call for medical services. I mean, the time that went on as we're watching, this young man fall over time and time again, being propped up against that car, it is just sickening.
It certainly is. Tracy and Joanna, thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, another black man dies at the hands of the police. Even though it's black police officers, it's still a racist act, because they thought they were above the law, and it looks like that was personal. I really don't understand why, but it is what it is. That when they get into law enforcement, they give bullies a gun and they give them the option to beat up people. They don't protect and serve. they just run rampant. Don't get me wrong. I come from a family of police officers. They are good cops. But sometimes they give the wrong people the guns. All right. Moving on. The Republicans again came back with whataboutism, and they removed Ilhan Omar from committee. Makes no sense. Just because she's Muslim and she's black and she's smarter than them. Republicans hate women.
Hypocrisy is rank in the Republican Party right now. Yesterday, after voting to remove Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Ken Buck was overheard in an elevator calling it the stupidest vote in the world. According to roll call, his fellow Republican Mike Simpson agreed and added that all it does is make Omar a martyr. And being the brave public servants that they are, they urge fellow passengers in the elevator to not let leadership know their thoughts. We won't do that. House Republicans are actively trying to gaslight the country into thinking that what Ilhan Omar did was on the same level as the Republicans that Democrats removed from committees over a year ago. But it's not the same. Omar was criticized by both parties for playing into anti-Semitic tropes, including when she insinuated that Israel's allies in America were motivated by money. She did apologize for that tweet 1 day later. Meanwhile, Paul Gosar, who accused Omar of anti-Semitism, actually went to a pro-Hitler conference and later hung out with white nationalist Nick Fuentes with no apology. Even after public outcry, he spoke at the conference 1 year later. He claimed it was a miscommunication and said he was done dealing with Nick. But then a few months later, tweeted and deleted a documentary about Fuentes. No apology. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she also went to that conference. Again, no apology. And she defended going. I'm joined now by Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio and Dean Obadala, MSNBC daily columnist and host of SiriusXM's The Dean Obadala Show. Welcome to you both. So, Susan, are Republicans getting away with it? I mean, do you think the American public actually conflates Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene with Ilhan Omar, Eric Swalwell, and Adam Schiff?
No, I mean, those who...
According to Fox News, where 90% of they get their news from, I'd say yes.
Pay very close attention, yes, but basically, they are going to get away with it, Michael. I don't like saying it, but that's the reality, because this news is not as big of news as other things, like the classified documents, and more importantly for Democrats, like the job numbers that came out today. So they get away with it in the sense of the public probably won't really care about it too much, but when they want to bring it up and do pointed things to the Republicans, the Democrats will have it in their pocket, which is rightfully so, because it is disgraceful that she was removed from this committee. I have very little in common with the Congresswoman politically, but it shouldn't be about politics. She is qualified to be there, frankly, as were the other two Congress members that were removed from committees. But to see on the floor, to see these Republicans actually vote to kick her off, they have no shame. I mean, and of course we say that all the time, so I don't know.
Yeah, okay. We've kind of run through the shame factor in all of this. So, Dean, that sort of, I guess in one sense, sort of begs the question of, this idea of a Congresswoman Omar as a martyr. What do you make of that assessment by Congressman Simpson?
She's not a martyr. She's stronger now than ever. Her speech yesterday on the floor was great. She was defiant, Michael. She said, "You're not going to silence her." This is a woman who lived in a war-torn refugee camp, came to America in her teens, and has moved up to be a member of the House of Representatives. Look, the GOP went after her for one reason, Michael, the same reason Donald Trump targeted her. They chanted, "Send her back," at a rally of his in July 2019. It's not what she's about or what she says, it's who she is. She's black, she's a Muslim, she's an immigrant, she's a strong woman. She's all the things so much of the GOP base doesn't like rolled into one. That's what this is about. So Congressman Buck can say this is the dumbest thing they've done. Not to Kevin McCarthy. Look at it. It took him 15 ballots to get elected. It took one to demonize and target a black Muslim woman, and they all got on board, all the Republicans. This plays well for the GOP base. And last thing, Michael, there are over 270 Republicans in the House and the Senate. Of the 270 plus, how many are black women? 0. And there's a reason why.
Yep. Republicans don't like women, especially black women. I didn't know that no black woman was a part of the Democratic Party, but I mean the Republicans, but I know it's part of the Democrats. Oh, that's a fine. Excuse me. This is the Common Sense Party podcast. At this point, we can put your business here to advertise and promote your product. Please contact us at the Common Sense Party Pod at gmail.com to nominate or promote your product on a weekly basis. And this again is the Common Sense Party Pod. I'm your host, Dwayne Hartley. Rate us, review us, like, follow, comment, and give us feedback. Give us 4 stars, give us 5 stars, give us 3 stars, give us 2 stars, give us any stars. I can assume if you don't give us any stars that I'm doing it perfectly. We are available on Google Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, TuneIn, and we're trying to get Apple. Yeah, we're trying to get Apple one time or another. We're trying to get Apple. Okay. And we're also on Spotify. Moving on. Oh, we're moving on to Jamaica giving away their stuff to the Chinese. Check this out.
Please explain how China has strategically taken over control of numerous African countries and Jamaica without the use of military force. What will their domination mean long term?
Great question. I'll pause because it bothers me when I look at Africa and the Caribbean islands. And I just came back from Aruba, and I'll be going later on this year to Martinique, Curacao, and back to Suriname in South America. But it bothers me when I look at the history of how we fought for liberation followed by independence in the Caribbean, only to hand that independence back over to another race of people. So we fought for freedom from the white man, and now we're handing over that freedom to the yellow man. When I was in Jamaica, 2015, I keynoted National Heroes Week, Irie FM and Ocho Rios, and Marcus Garvey's back, me and Muta Baruka, actually. And while I was in Jamaica, I heard all these rumblings about the Chinese. And I've been to Jamaica before, and I've seen the Chinese. But in studying what they have done since my last visit, I was astounded and appalled to find out that they had made so much inroads into controlling and influencing the infrastructure of the Jamaican people. The Chinese built a road from Kingston, one side of the island, to the other side of the island. And in exchange for the roads that they built, the Jamaican government, unless this has changed since then, gave the Chinese total control over the toll money that will be made by people using the northwest or east-west highway. Why would you give a foreign power complete monetary control of the tolls on this road that you know half of Jamaica gonna be using? You're talking millions of dollars of revenue you're giving to the yellow man just because he built the road. In addition to that, The Chinese are building it's probably done by now. They were building at that time 2 schools, and they were bringing Chinese educators over to help the Jamaican people educate black children. They built the Children's Hospital, which is supposed to be largely staffed with Chinese. They also gave the Chinese total control of all tourism on both sides of that highway that goes from one side of the island to the other. I was also told that they gave the Chinese the right to drill in natural rainforests in the Jamaican on the Jamaican territory for Chinese exploitation. They'd given them tax abatements, and they also purchased, if I'm not mistaken, the port, the main port of Jamaica.
They own the port.
Is owned by the Chinese. Exactly. If another race owns your port, that means they control what's coming in. They control what's going out. What about the drugs? What about the guns? What about the COVID? You don't know what them people bringing in. And you mean to tell me that the Chinese care so much about Jamaican people that they're not going to educate our kids and take care of their health? Chinese don't care about black folks. Go to China. Go to China and see how they treat black people in China. So to me, what I think this is the government of Jamaica, like so many African governments, so many other Caribbean governments have done. They've gotten in bed financially with the Chinese. The Chinese have studied the way the white man has practiced neocolonialism throughout Africa, and the Chinese has learned that these black leaders don't really care about their people. They're all about their pocket. So I'm going to do what the white man did, but I'm going to do it 1 time better. I'm going to offer them double the money. You let me take over this land right here, I'll get the white man offering you $1 million, I'm offering you $3 million. And I'm going to build you a retirement home. And I'm going to pay for all your kids to go to college in China. You follow what I'm saying? And I'm going to give you a private military. So the Chinese have basically become neo-colonialists 2.0. They're outdoing the Europeans. You follow me? And they're giving Caribbean and African leaders offers that they can't refuse. And guess what? When you abdicate on that loan that they give you, because all this is loans. These are not handouts. It's all loans. When you abdicate on the loan in that contract, you have to give them large concessions of land and large concessions of your economy. There's an African country right now. Is it Uganda? There was an African country who defaulted on their loan to the Chinese, and they now own their national airport. I forget which, they own the airport now because they couldn't pay back the loan. The Chinese know what they're doing. The problem we have as African people is we tend to think anybody who's not white is a friend of ours. Nobody is our friend, not the Arab, not the Chinese, not the Latino, except the African Latinos who identify with us, not the East Indians, not the Native Americans. We don't have friends. But black people have been seduced into this multiculturalism, which says the brown man is your friend, the yellow man is your friend, the red man is your friend. No, they're not. Black people don't have no friends. And my greatest fear about Chinese neocolonialism 2.0, my greatest fear about Chinese neocolonialism 2.0 is when the time for revolution comes. Because there will be a second revolution because you got to get rid of the Chinese. You're going to have to fight 10 times harder. When you fought to get the white man out in the 60s, in the 40s, in the 50s, it was a little easier because he don't have the numerical strength. The white man had to use other black people in his armies to fight blacks because they're only 10% of the world. They don't have enough. China is the most populous country on the planet Earth. They have 1 billion people, not to mention their reserves around the planet. Okay? Don't get me wrong. African people, we're 2 billion. We're the biggest. The problem is most of us identify something other than black, which reduces our numbers. I'm not African. I'm multiracial. I'm not African. I'm Latino. I'm not African. I'm Samoan. You follow? So we are disintegrated based on these names. Here's the point that I'm making. Because the Chinese have the technology, because the Chinese have the manpower, the war, the second war for African independence, the second revolution for African independence against Chinese neocolonialism 2.0 is going to be 10 times as bloody, 10 times as long, and it's going to require the sacrifice of 10 times as many people. We will not be able to throw them out of Africa and throw them out of the Caribbean as easily as we did the whites. And the whites wasn't easy. That was a hell of a war. So just multiply that by 100, And that's what we're going to have to deal with the Chinese. The worst thing we're doing is giving them all this, and it's being done through the politicians. The politicians are doing it. But here's three things that keeps Africa enslaved to the Chinese and the white man by virtue of their politicians. Number one, we have been distracted in America, the Caribbean, Africa, all over the world. It's a Pan-African problem. We have been distracted from development with democracy. Everybody's focusing on who to vote for. You're not looking at the conditions. What's going to change whether he wins or he wins? Because guess who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your oil. Who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your gold. Who's financing both of them? The same people stealing your coltan. You follow me? So democracy is a joke they play on black people to make you think you can have radical transformation without revolution. The reason the white man pushes democracy globally so hard is if there's ever a breakdown in the black man's confidence in democracy, the only alternative is revolution. So that's number one. Democracy is a distraction from development. Number two, when I travel, especially Africa, but it's true in the Caribbean also, black people are more concerned with their tribe being in control than they are with liberation from foreign control. Are you following me? I've seen it. So when the elections is coming up, it's not about freeing us from white supremacy or Chinese imperialism. It's about, are my people going to be the president? Is somebody from my tribe going to be the prime minister? And because they're more concerned about tribal imperialism than African independence, this democratic scheme that they run on black people continues because we're so petty and so small in our thinking. I just want to make sure his people don't get the presidency. I'm not even looking at the bigger picture. The white man knows this. The Chinese know this. So they come in, exploit, finance both sides, so no matter who wins, they get all the resources. And then the third issue is most African leaders and Caribbean are foreign educated. They go to Britain for their education. They go to France for their education. They go to Belgium. They come to America for their education. And what did Dr. Carter G. Woodson say in Miseducation of the Negro? The college-educated Negro is seldom of any use to his race because the education he gets is an education that takes him away from identification with his people. So most of our African and Caribbean and American leaders are Negropean. They have an African body. They have a European mind. So the white man and the yellow man are controlling the black man through remote control by virtue of conscious control of the way that he thinks. The entire thought process of the African leader, there's a few exceptions, but for most of them and the Caribbean, the entire thought process is that of a white man. How can we get free?
All right, that's Dr. Umar. I kind of agree with him. I kind of disagree because didn't he go to school also? But hey, they do destabilization in countries, so that is possible. Yep. So that is how China is controlling Jamaica. So the next time you go to Jamaica, you'll probably see a lot of Chinese Jamaicans because they built a road in 3 years, I think. All right, moving on. Bill Barr, yes. AG under Trump, he abused his power. No shockers here. Check it out.
New heat on former Trump official Bill Barr. Take a look at the explosive New York Times report, which exposed how he punched this pressure scheme. Now, he held these check-ins every week with someone we told you about, his hand-picked prosecutor. He went abroad to press European officials. Barr's prosecutor never found the evidence for the deep state conspiracy theories they had. They didn't prove alleged crimes, they lost in court, and now there's questions of ethics facing Barr. He had even said at the start of the probe, when looking towards allied spies, both in Britain and CIA, that he suspected America's friends had somehow been targeting Donald Trump. Well, if you can't prove that, it sounds a lot like a conspiracy theory. No evidence there. Durham and Barr also pushed a narrative, and then he'd go on TV in the middle of his so-called open probe and say stuff like this.
The evidence shows that we're not dealing with just mistakes or sloppiness. There was something far more troubling here. The president has every right to be frustrated because I think what happened to him was one of the greatest travesties in American history without any basis.
Spin. And it's not adding up well for him. Now, Barr says that this thing was not started as a criminal investigation. He had a duty to find out what happened in the Mueller probe. But there's a difference between a duty to do the investigations, that's what DOJ does all the time, quietly without TV interviews, and trying to set a goal in advance and then reverse engineer it to prove it. Now Barr is also trying to downplay what were those unusual meetings with the hand-picked prosecutor, saying they didn't break any regulations. But let me give you a little lawyer advice here. When you're accused of something, and instead of denying it or addressing it factually or substantively, you just say it didn't break a rule or a law, that's a sign that you already know you're in hot water. He didn't say that he wasn't regularly having Scotch dinners with his hand-picked political buddy and traveling around the world like some sort of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure for weaponizing the DOJ, which is the very thing some House Republicans now say they want to accuse others of. No, he didn't say any of that. He just said, hey, I didn't break any rules. Well, that brings us to Andrew Weissman and a big question. Did he break any rules? An answer from someone who was literally Mueller's top person, FBI General Counsel, and a respected prosecutor. I'm interested in the answer when we come back. Oh, you know what, Andrew? We're not coming back. You're here right now. I got confused. You know, sometimes we do that. They call it a TV tease, but, you know, juggling. All right, that's the question.
Well, that was
the question
quite
is,
a tease then.
hey, you know, you can see it's like in our blood. No, the question remains, A, did he break any rules? And B, when you look at that answer, does it tell you that he doesn't really want to get into this in any way, or am I overreading it?
Well, let's start with did he break any rules? It really depends on what the it is, because Barr did so many things that were improper. But if you're asking the question about, you know, just meeting with a prosecutor and having drinks with them, I mean, it clearly shows a lack of independence. But that's not against the rules, and that could be done by somebody and be totally proper. That's not Bill Barr's sin. Bill Barr's sins are so many and so varied, whether it is intervening in the Roger Stone case, whether it's intervening in the Michael Flynn case, situations where people were facing, many other defendants were facing the same situation, but he interfered and helped them in their case because they were friends of the president in ways that were completely legally antithetical to the position the department took with other people. That is a fundamental assault on the rule of law. With respect to just the Durham investigation itself, remember the Inspector General had done an investigation, a long one, into the very issue of whether the FBI was justified in opening its investigation.